Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and I'm here for a first-round mock draft with Dom from the Project Prospect, one of the guys I met at the Senior Bowl. He's got a great channel. Make sure to go follow if you can. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good, Jake. I appreciate you having me, brother. Always look forward to shooting the business and talking draft all over the place. So I'm real grateful that you had me.
Yeah, for sure. It was fun talking about it pretty much all week last week. We had a good time down at the Senior Bowl with a lot of people. I've come to the conclusion that I think the Jets fan base is probably the most well versed with the draft, or the smartest as far as that goes. Just from my time this year, it felt like I met a lot of Jets fans down there.
Yeah, we are Jake. We're the champions of the off season, brother. We're versed on this stuff. For 14 consecutive years, our off season has started sometime around October. So.
Yeah, well, we're right there with you for the most part. We just once in a while we sneak out of it and then we go right back. So, but hopefully that ends for both teams. I've said it to you before, but I love the hire this offseason with Aaron Glenn. I think they've got a legit shot. It's just all going to come down probably to quarterback here. So, let's go ahead and we'll kind of explain what we're going to do here as I mute this other Discord thing that's going on in the background. So we are going to be flipping picks here. So Dom is going to take the odds. I'm going to take the evens. We're going to pick for each other's team. So he'll pick for the Jaguars. I'll pick for the Jets. We'll have trades as well where we see it fit. And then aside from that should be about it. So it should be a fun one for sure. Are you ready to hop in this?
Yeah, let's rock, dude.
All right. So you are in control of the Dastardly Titans. So is this, for you, is this a pick if you're the Titans that you would be looking to make? Would you be looking to trade it? Or if you're making it, what direction do you go?
So here's the thing. I think that there's an honest 50-50 shot that Tennessee just sticks and picks here. They could decide with Borgonzi now in control, with Callahan seemingly having solid footing with an understanding that this team is not ready to compete and the rebuild will probably take a little bit of time. I think that they're all that footing in the Tennessee hierarchy is kind of settled. I don't know if Will Levis is the answer. I don't know if Tennessee would move out of this pick. However, if there's a time to get rid of the number one pick, it's probably in this draft. And that's exactly what I'm going to have to do. I think there's a team that's just a little bit more desperate than Tennessee for a quarterback, and that's going to be a trade up from the New York Giants at number 3.
Okay, I like that idea.
Yeah, listen, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are really fighting for they're on their last leg here. So I think the Giants, more so than any team in this draft, is really dependent on a quarterback. So why not go up to 1 since the price? I mean, trading up to number 1 is always pricey, but the price isn't going to be as drastic as other drafts, just because I think you're only moving up 2 spots, and you also have you have a lot lighter of a class up top. The quarterback's class is not that robust, if you will, even the guys at the top. So I think the Titans would be willing to make do and pass on one of these quarterbacks to either take a shot at a guy later, in the later rounds, or maybe just wait until 26 and ride out one more year, knowing that the hierarchy's in good shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and move up with the Giants, and I think it'll take 3 and 34, and probably a 2 next year. I think 1 and 2 2s would get it done.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of in the boat where I think this is maybe a little more expensive. So it's interesting. I kind of compare it to 2023. And I think 2023's class with the quarterbacks is a little better, just by a smidge.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, like the amount the Bears got for that, and kind of considering like where the Panthers were expected to pick and such, I've been kind of on the train thinking that this is maybe a future one that gets involved, 34, and then maybe like some change with that. But I've seen everything for this pick. I've seen some expensive trades. I've seen like a second rounder and that's it, or even a third rounder, and just a lot of crazy stuff. But I would not be shocked, and we'll go with this because it really won't matter.
Yeah, for this exercise, I think it's moot. If the listeners want to adjust it or play around with the simulator themselves, I think that's fine. However you want to do it. I mean, you want to give two. If you think it's 2 1s and a 2, I'm fine with that. Again, for this exercise, it's kind of moot. But I really think two 2s and a 1 will get you down 2 spots.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I do think this is the trade that happens. If I had to predict, which there's a lot of things that can happen, so I'm not saying this is a over 50% chance, but if I had to say what happened, I would actually agree with you that this is probably the trade that takes place. It's just a question of what it costs. And I can see the Giants, with how desperate they are, having watched Hard Knocks last year, seeing the situation they're in, and they have to get a quarterback, and they can't get one where they are, at least in theory. It could be a future one. It could be a lot that they're giving up, but it's really an unknown. So we're going to force that trade, and we're going to flip these guys. I completely agree, though. I think this is where I would lean for how the draft would kick off. Now, the conversation, what quarterback is this going to be? So
I think, listen, this is not what I'm going to go kind of more so on a predictive kind of avenue. I happen to be in the minority. I happen to have Shedeur Sanders as my highest rated quarterback in this class. I just think that the floor is higher, and the variance on the floor and the ceiling is a lot closer than where it is with Cam Ward. However, like I said, I think that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are really picking for their lives here. So I don't know if the safe pick of Shedeur Sanders on this roster is the best fit. I don't know how much Shedeur Sanders really elevates an offense. I think Shedeur Sanders is a good piece to kind of manage an offense. Where on the flip side, I think Cam Ward has enough special ability, although it's recluse at sometimes, and he plays a lot of hero ball, and throws a lot of balls in harm's way. I think you swing for the upside and the higher ceiling here, so Cam Ward's going to be the pick.
Gotcha. And yeah, I hear sometimes like Jordan Love be thrown out as a player they kind of compare him to. I see, it's interesting to me because I kind of see this almost the opposite, where I think Sanders is very closely linked to the Giants a lot. Mm-hmm. And you've even seen like clips of them talking to him. You can see like Joe, is it Shane or Schoen?
Joe Schoen.
Yeah. Joe Schoen. Yeah, he's like talking about Shedeur Sanders at the press conference at the end of the year, and like he's just smiling the whole time. And so it's interesting to me from that regard. And I'm personally someone who has Cam higher, but I've kind of wondered if they're going to go with Sanders and kind of maybe even take it safe, because he was adamant for some reason that they didn't have to make the playoffs next year for him to keep his job, which I don't know if I believe that, but that's at least what he said. But I would completely agree with Cam Ward being the best pick here. I would absolutely have to say that. He's my top quarterback personally. I think he's the highest upside quarterback. That would be something to get the Giants back on track with the number 1 overall pick if they trade it up. So, yeah, it's maybe a little bit of a different way we see that, but it's not like a huge variance between these quarterbacks at the top.
Yeah, and like I said, my grading, I mean, they were points away from one another. I think I have Shedeur 22 in the class. Actually, I can pull it up here. I got Shedeur 23rd and Cam Ward 24th.
Oh my gosh! Yes, it's like dead even.
Yeah, it's close enough. And like I said, I always kind of believe 50% of what I see and half of what I hear, because this is smokescreen season.
Yeah.
So there's so much connecting the Giants and Shador. I bet you they're just trying to ward off and keep, all the buzzards away and really would look for Cam Ward here. So Cam Ward's going to be the pick for the Giants.
Gotcha. Now, talking about a different team that might be really interested in Shador Sanders, this is also a trade for me at number 2. I just can't imagine the Cleveland Browns with potentially going into a rebuild right now. Either they have to take a quarterback here, or you're trading with a team that wants a quarterback because someone will want to trade up here with you, right? Because it's the Giants, or if the Giants have already done it, it's the Raiders to me. And if you're the Raiders, you already know they're big fans of Shador Sanders down there. At least Tom Brady is affiliated with him in a lot of ways. Mark Davis has been rumored to be a big fan of his, and he's not going to fall to pick number 6 here. So I kind of wonder if this is also a trade, and you end up having the two teams that were in control for most of the process of 1 and 2 end up having a trade back up to 1 and 2 after losing those picks. So I am going to have a trade here, unless you have a team that would perhaps outbid or you think would go after it that you control. Probably going to have the Raiders moving up to 2.
No, I'm all game, man. Let it rip.
I guess technically I control the Jets, but that would be the other one I would think about. But
I can tell you,
I wouldn't do it if I was you.
No, I can tell you the Jets aren't going to trade up for a quarterback. They're one of many teams that I think are trying to move back and acquire assets, whether this year or next year, more so than move up. I mean, the Aaron Rodgers decision is still looming, but they could easily move off of Aaron Rodgers and have Tyrod Taylor bridge this year, even if they draft a guy mid-round, have him battle out with Jordan
Travis?
Jordan Travis, good Lord, I had a brain fart there. Yeah. Him battle out, the rookie battle out with Jordan Travis to possibly take over for Tyrod Taylor midway through the season. So their bridge quarterback, if it's not Aaron Rodgers already on the roster for $6.5 million, that's Tyrod. So I can sleep easy telling you that the Jets aren't going to trade up for quarterback in this class.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that plan personally. That's what I want to see them do. Because I think if you're not going to win a Super Bowl this year, you don't want to spend like $40 million or whatever the number is on Aaron Rodgers. It's kind of pointless at that point. And you got a guy already on the team in Tyrod Taylor who can get you through that year and might be good to work with Jordan Travis. For this trade, I am going to say a future 1 and the 3rd round pick. Now, once again, it doesn't really impact much here. But I don't know. What do you think? That's kind of expensive? You think that's about where it falls? Or
no, I mean, I think it's probably where it falls, moving up from 6. Yeah, I think that's fair. Like I said,
Cleveland would probably lose out on some guys.
Yeah, for this exercise, I don't think it really is going to matter all that much.
Gotcha. All right, well, we're going to roll with that then. And then there's really only one quarterback to talk about here. It's Shador Sanders for me. I was a big fan of Milroe early on in the season. Unfortunately, everything's kind of just gone downhill since, and I don't think there's another first-round prospect as of now unless Jackson Dart changes my mind eventually. Yeah. But I have not got into his film enough to come to that conclusion. But you're back up here with the team you started with. So 2 quarterbacks are gone. Tennessee's in control of all the other players in this class outside the quarterback position. What are you going to do with this pick?
So I think there's a couple ways that you can go for sure. I think Abdul Carter's the best player in this class overall. I think you can find a spot for him. I mean, Arden Key's under contract still. Howard Landry's under contract still, but he's kind of getting up there in years. I don't know exactly from the top of my head what his contract status looks like. I know they did spend a draft pick a couple years back, or actually no, they signed from free agency the kid Ali Gay, who also rushes the quarterback a little bit. Jalen Harrell was a late round pick last year. So they have some depth at the outside linebacker position. I don't know if that would preclude them from taking Abdul Carter, but Tennessee, I think can really, that's an avenue they can go. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Travis Hunter. I think
Okay.
that there's an immediate spot for him to play, um, at one of the outside spots. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed might have been one of the worst free agent acquisitions last year. He's still under contract. I think Travis Hunter can come in and probably work the opposite side of Sneed over Awuzie. You still have Roger McCreary there, man in the slot. And then you still might have a package where you put Travis Hunter, in some offensive reps, a couple sets or so on and so forth, and let him get 5 to 10 offensive plays on a team that is desperately in need of playmakers. So Travis Hunter is going to be the pick here for Tennessee.
Yeah, and I begrudgingly say I love that. Of course, I'm a Jaguars fan. This would be hard to watch, and the Titans getting the best player in the class, in my opinion, and also a haul for the number 1 pick. But, I mean, if you're talking about how to manage that situation, I think that's the best way you could possibly manage it. And they get very fortunate here, I think, with a quarterback going in number 2. But ultimately, like you said, I mean, Hunter and Carter are both incredible options. Like, for me, it's almost even between these two players. I think they're in a tier of their own in this class, and if you just have one of them available after trading back, it's a great situation. Now, pick number 4, I don't think we're going to have any trade here. If I was not being predictive, if I was the Carolina Panthers, I would move up. I'd move up to 4. I'd take Carter. And if I was the Patriots, I want to move back because maybe I want to go get Will Campbell or get an offensive lineman to help out with that side of the ball. But I don't think Carolina does that. I remember last offseason, they were wanting to trade back. That was their ideal scenario. And they're probably still going to have someone really good fall here. So I'm probably going to have to make the pick here with the Patriots unless you have a team you want to move up with.
Nope, I'm good. And about the Panthers, I understand the rationale and I like it that you go up and you plug the guy that you want. And I would assume that for the Panthers, I'm not saying for the Patriots, but I'm assuming for the Panthers, they would have their eyes on Abdul Carter. But 2 things here. One, they already don't have a second-round pick. Chicago owns their second-round pick. They're a little bit light.
Rams.
They have the Rams. Okay.
Yeah, it's late, but there is one.
Yeah, there is. So I wasn't, thinking about that. But that was one thing. And 2, I think the depth of this edge class will still, if that's the avenue that they want to go, even if they don't get one that they think is value at 8, I think they'll be able to get one in the 2nd or 3rd round, which can come into play.
Yeah, there's a lot of options at edge in this class. I know for me, I have Carter way above the rest of these players, but I don't think they would do this. It's just what I would do personally for both teams. But I think if you're New England and you're sticking here, Carter's the best player on the board. You can use this player, and as much as you want to get help on the offensive side of the ball, you can do that with some other picks, and I just think this is something you don't overthink. So I'm going to go with Abdul Carter at number 4. Now, you're in charge of my Jacksonville Jaguars, and this is the scenario that there's a lot of debate on what you do. Because I think if Hunter or Carter falls, I know Carter is not as much of a need. I would still take him because he's the best player on the board, and I think you can use him because you do have a lot of snaps getting vacated on the edge. You have no depth there, and Carter is someone who's also got linebacker experience. He can stunt over the middle. There's a lot of things you can do with him. So I would have been down for that, but this is where it really gets interesting because the board is wide open, right? There's no clear consensus guy among the draft community that you would take in number 5. So for you, what would you do if you're the Jaguars in this situation?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways I would look if I'm whoever the Jaguars GM is going to be and his brain trust. And I'm just going to talk this out real quick. So I've seen a lot of people linking Mason Graham to the Jaguars, and I get it. He's a good talent. Could fit that bill. Give you some pass rush. From the interior, outside of Trayvon Walker, outside of Hines-Allen, a real deadly trio, if you will. The thing is, and I don't know, you're much more in tune with the Jags than I am. I do know that they spent relatively high capital on some interior guys last year in Mason
Yeah.
Smith and Jordan Jefferson. Now, they might be different types of interior linemen than Mason Graham. And I'm not going to say that they're better than Mason Graham, but I just, maybe the change of regime, they're not really tied into guys like Mason Smith and Jordan Jefferson, so it could make sense. I would like, personally, I think that there's an influx that needs to be done in the wide receiver room as well. Obviously Brian Thomas Jr. is there. Could they? There was rumors that they were ready or trying to move off of Christian Kirk last year. Could that come about? I don't know how you feel as a Jags fan about Gabe Davis. To me, it was a bit underwhelming.
Yeah, I would be trading him right now
Yeah.
if I could get a team to take on the cap charges. I'd give a pick.
Correct. So I think about that. I think it would be, and I'm not saying I'm not going to do this, but I think Will Johnson would be a great fit here as well. I know that there's questions about the medicals. I think he's a phenomenal talent, and that he's the third overall player on my board.
Same.
I just think that big playability is something that that can turn a game upside down. And I don't know. Tyson Campbell he's a good player. I like Tyson Campbell. He needs a running mate, right? He needs somebody on the opposite side. I think Jarrian Jones locks up the slot, and that's fine. But there's that avenue, and then there's the who replaces Brandon Scherf at right guard. Is this a spot for an offensive lineman? Personally, I think if this pick was at like 10 or 11, that might be the area that I think is of most pressing need. On top of it, who knows how healthy Walker Little's going to be? Walker Little's going to be at the beginning of the season. So one of those guys with guard tackle flexibility does make sense. So for me, this pick's going to come down to two players, and that's Will Johnson and Will Campbell. So
Okay.
Yeah, I think Campbell, like I said, I think he's the best lineman in the class. I just have a problem spending a top 5 pick on a guy that might end up only being an interior lineman. So for that reason,
Yes.
I'm gonna roll the dice on the medicals. Obviously things could change after the combine and whatnot if it comes out that he's still not healthy or that he's hampered from it. But Will Johnson's gonna be my pick here for the Jaguars.
Yeah, and I'm all with that. I think Will Campbell's a really good prospect, but it is the question: how high do you take that type of player? The other side of it to me too, and maybe I'm just like off base here, but I look at Tyler Booker as a prospect. I think he's like damn near perfect for a guard prospect of what I've seen over time. So it's like if I can take that guy in the middle to late first round, am I going to trust Will Campbell or another offensive lineman transitioning inside to be better than him long term? Like, is that a smart investment for me this early in the class? And so that's been part of my thought process with why I've never really had Will Campbell going at 5 or even in like a small trade back up here to Jacksonville. If he plays tackle, I think it makes more sense. And I know his arm length is like really close as far as whether he would or not.
He's a bit stiff, though. I think
there were some problems this year.
Yeah, I think he's got guard written all over him, and I just can't fathom taking a guard outside of like a Quentin Nelson type this high, and I don't think Will Campbell's like that.
Yeah, and he's an 1/8 of an inch short of the 33-inch threshold, so it's really close with him. But yeah, and Will Johnson, it's a big need. It's the best player on the board, so I'm definitely down for that. I just kind of wonder if he ends up falling, though, on draft day, because now there's all this buzz around it. So it'll be interesting to see where he actually ends up going. Now, with the Cleveland Browns, man, what do you do here? Because, I love the idea of trading down and building up for 2026 and, trying to put yourself in a good situation. But I'm curious as to who the heck I would take here. Because, quarterback's not an option. Running back, I don't think you would take this high if you're Cleveland. Especially with all the work they've still got to do. Offensive line, I love Josh Simmons. I'm a huge fan of him, but he's not going to go this high. Plus, the medicals are a concern there too. Um, Will Johnson's gone, so they have a lot of corners, but I know they've got some questions about maybe the long-term future of some of them. Greg Newsome, for example. Mason Smith and Tetairoa McMillan are definitely good options here.
Mason Graham, you mean?
Oh, yeah, Mason Graham. Yeah, I'm thinking of the Jacksonville Mason.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a team that would make a move here. And you're not going to move down twice if you're Cleveland anyway.
Yeah, I the only team I would think about maybe coveting Mason Graham, and for me, it's probably Cleveland's in a position where they're taking BPA at this pick. The only team that I could think of trading up for anyone left on this board would be San Francisco, because I think that they could use a very high end penetrating 3 tech like Mason Graham in that Robert Saleh scheme, especially since they're losing Javon Hargrave. They've released him. So I think that they might entertain it, but outside of that, I don't think anybody else is trading up. There's no one here on the board worth spending capital on. So I would probably say Cleveland sticks and picks.
All right. Yeah. It's between Mesa and Tetairoa for me. And it'll honestly probably be the same for the Jets pick here, which we'll look at a little closer at that. I think for Cleveland, you're going to lose Myles Garrett this offseason as well, so your defensive line is going to take a hit. I'm going to get a little different here. I'm going to take Mason Graham for that. I don't know of any dominant players on the interior of Cleveland's defensive line, and Graham, I think, is a very safe pick. I think he's going to be a very good player in the NFL, so I'll take him at 6 for the Cleveland Browns. Now, with the New York Jets, I know they've got they brought in a lot of receivers recently. I don't know how many stick around, though. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be here again this next year? If he's not, Devontae's gone, Allen Lazard's gone. You're kind of stuck with, you can add on players I'm forgetting here, but you'd have Garrett Wilson, Malaki Corley, and who else at that point that you'd call a starter? And no, Malachi's obviously not had a great start so far.
Who else would be a starter? The pickings are slim. But you're right in the sense that Allen Lazard is gone. His contract is constructed in a way that they could get rid of him after this year. So the depth chart right now, if Adams is gone, it's Garrett, it's Malachi Corley, it's Xavier Gibson, and Malik Taylor, who spent the majority of the season last year on IR. So it is an absolute need.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to 2 players for me here. It's Tetairoa McMillan and it's Tyler Warren at number 7. I think they could definitely use a tight end. Warren would be awesome. But I just think McMillan is probably going to be the more impactful player at the end of the day, and that locks down 2 top receivers for your team. You also obviously have the questions about Garrett Wilson long term that have come up. I think they'll get that resolved. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I think it just pushes it over the edge for me. So I'm going to go with Tetairoa McMillan at number 7 for the Jets. I'm sure they could sell some really nice gear. It'd be like Jet McMillan, something like that. You could make some money off that.
Yeah, and listen, that's the way I would go too. And realistically, that's the way I'm hoping that the board falls. If they can't move down, I hope the board falls exactly like that and Tet McMillan lands, because I think he's a good complement to skill set wise to what Garrett Wilson is. And like I said, you're going to need an influx of players, whether it's through the draft or a blend between the draft and free agency to bring in to give whoever the quarterback is weapons. So I would have taken the same selection here.
Yeah, and you're setting up your future quarterback very well, I think, in New York. You got a good backfield. You've got 2 good receivers. Now, you want to get a tight end at some point, but this is a deep class.
Correct.
This would happen maybe day 2, day 3, and you'd have a good situation. I love what they've done with the offensive line as well, with like Fashanu there. Moves like that, I think they would have legit good infrastructure for the day comes when they get a quarterback. Now, you've got 2 picks in a row here because you're going to do Panthers pick for me since I took the Jets here, and then you'll be back up with the Saints at 9. So, what are you doing at number 8 for the Carolina Panthers?
Panthers got holes everywhere, man. The Panthers have holes everywhere. I think, you look at the defensive side of the ball, and they need some edge help. They got Jadeveon Clowney on contract for one more year. The pass rush after that is really, it thins out. I know that they, 2 years ago they drafted DJ Johnson out of Clemson, who's a nice player, but he's rotational at best. You hope that you get Derek Brown back next year healthy. He can provide some push from the middle and really complement Jadeveon Clowney. So I think pass rusher is important. I think the defensive backfield kind of needs to be retooled. They got J.C. Horn. Outside of J.C. Horn, there's a lot of holes there. Mike Jackson, who they brought in as a free agent, I believe, is in a walk year. I don't know how much depth they have in that defensive backfield, but to me, this might be a little bit rich for a cornerback, unless you want to talk about Malaki Starks, who can kind of play that slot / post safety position, which would be a need. But I don't know if I can get away. Listen, Jadeveon Clowney's older. I think that you need another pass rusher here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Mike Green off the board from Marshall. Okay. This to me is kind of the area where I think the ceiling of where Mike Green can go. I think he can, come in and really complement both Derek Brown and Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney is more of that, edge setter first, power rusher second, where Mike Green is that, kind of twitchy, bendy, speed rusher off the end. You can play him up on 2 feet. You can put his hand in the dirt. You can kind of move him all over the place. Mike Green's going to be the pick here.
Gotcha. I was wondering if you were going to go with Shamar Stewart for a moment there, but I have Green as my number 2 guy, and I would have to agree with that. It's a big need for them, and this is kind of where you can see him going. I heard a lot of jokes from NFL Stock Exchange about how he's just going to go to the NFC South no matter what, and it really makes sense if you look at all the teams that can use him. I don't know if he'd get past the Saints, and you look at the Falcons, the Bucks. He's got to go to one of those teams most likely. But pick number 9, you've got the really well set up for the future New Orleans Saints. So what are you doing here?
Oh man, you could throw a dart at a board that has every position on there and probably hit something that the Saints need.
Yeah.
So again, I think that this is a situation where you take BPA. Now, for me, my next highest rated player on my board is Ashton Jeanty, and that's probably the one area where I don't know if they need to spend this high capital on. They do have Alvin Kamara re-signed. They do have Kendre Miller, even though he hasn't really produced so far in 2 years in the league. I believe Jamal Williams is still under contract. So if there's any depth whatsoever, it's probably there. So I'm going to actually, I'm going to go off the beaten path here. I'm going to go a different avenue than a lot of things that I've seen for the Saints. Offensive line or defensive line does make sense, but you have to get some weapons in here. So this is where I think I'm going to have Tyler Warren come off the board. He steps in. He's tight end 1 right off the bat. You still have Taysom Hill, and Taysom Hill, as you know, is not just your traditional tight end. He does a little bit of everything. But he gives, whether it's Derek Carr or Spencer Rattler, he gives them one more viable weapon. I think that there's enough in the wide receiver class that you're comfortable taking a complimentary guy for Olave later in the draft. But you can go ahead and pluck Tyler Warren, who can play in line, can flex out to the power slot, will give you a lot in both aspects of the game, the run and the pass. So I'm going to have Tyler Warren come off the board here for the Saints.
Yeah, I do like that pick for them. I know he's not done it a ton, but he was someone who did all these different roles in the offense. I almost wonder if he could take on some of what the Taysom Hill role has been over
Yeah.
time, so he could get off those cap hits. But I don't know. If I'm the Saints, like I'm getting rid of every player I can and just throwing the towel in for the next couple of years. But we all know they won't do that, or at least they have to prove they'll do it before I'll ever say they will. So I do like the pick though. Tyler Warren would be a really nice addition there and help out their offense a lot. Now the Bears, I was thinking of maybe trading up with Dallas to number 9 because I know New Orleans would probably take the picks, but oh man, I didn't do it. I thought about Ashton Jeanty there, and now at number 10, it's Jeanty or it's Campbell. To me, it's something like that because I think for the Bears, you have to work on the offensive line. That's top priority for Ben Johnson. That's a lot of why he succeeded in Detroit. They have a really bad unit in Chicago, but you also know that they value running backs really high. And Jeanty is available at number 10. That's a really good steal for them if they want to go that direction. So I don't know. It's really close for me. Would you have a way you would lean here with the Chicago Bears pick between those two, or is there maybe a third candidate you would look at?
No, I think I think there's a fair argument to be made on either of those points. I think the defensive line could be considered as well.
Yeah.
The thing I'm looking at is that Chicago has 2 high second-round picks, right? So I think if you bypass the offensive line here, is the drop-off from whatever offensive lineman you're thinking here, Will Campbell, is the drop-off from Will Campbell to that next tier of interior guys or guard tackle flexible guys really that big of a drop-off? Probably not. So to me, the decision comes between, do you want to go with Jeanty or do you want to go on the defensive line? That's what I would do for Chicago.
Yeah, and as well, I mean, you can get aggressive if you're Chicago here, and maybe we'll have a team trade up from the second round because that is an option here. If you're Chicago and you've got these picks, if you want to get back into the first and you see a player who falls, I mean, that's very much possible. We have a lot of offensive linemen that could really work out well for them. I think their tackle situation's fine. I know there's some talk maybe like Braxton Jones would play inside, but I think the interior is a lot of the question, and you could get a really good guard later on in the first round.
Correct.
Or even in the second. So that kind of seals it for me. We're going to go with the top running back here. We're going to take Ashton Jeanty at number 10. Plus, they have DeAndre Swift as their number 1 guy, and I'm pretty sure they moved on from him while Ben Johnson was in Detroit. So I don't know how that works out, if they would even commit to him long term.
Yeah, and that leaves me up with San Francisco. And it's funny because just what I said with Chicago kind of, resonates with San Francisco. I think the pick here is either on the defensive line or the offensive line, right? They need to replace Aaron Banks, who's a free agent. They could probably upgrade from Colton McKivitz at right tackle, and they're going to have to worry about a left tackle eventually because Trent Williams is just getting older. I don't know what their depth looks like. So I'm considering an offensive lineman here, maybe a guy that has guard tackle flexibility. But again, thinking of this defense, knowing that you have Robert Solin and how important that 3 tech is for him, I think I'm going to lean that way and try to pluck my lineman later in the draft, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Walter Nolen out of Mississippi. I think he's probably the next best pure 3 tech in the class. He's going to get, there's some question about how much effort he gives play in and play out. However, when he's on, he's damn near unblockable and unstoppable. And like I said, letting go of Javon Hargrave, even if they choose to bring him back, I think at a reduced rate and a reduced role, he's still the focal point of that interior pressure from the inside. So Walter Nolen's going to be the pick.
Yeah, see, and I love that you brought up the effort side of it because that's for me why I was lower on him entering the Senior Bowl. He popped up my board a little bit after, but that is the big question I have because it was a huge issue that I saw on film when I was watching him. But if you get the Walter Nolen that's giving 100% effort and playing as hard as he can, it's a phenomenal player. It's a first rounder for sure. So I could definitely understand the pick from that perspective. Now, Dallas, this is like, to me, wide open. I mean, you could use some offensive line help. I'm actually going to look up their depth chart just to make sure I look at this properly. So don't judge me for this. The tackle situation. So, oh, yeah, that's really good. Chuma Edoga? I know that guy.
He was former Jet.
Oh, he was?
Former Jet draft. Yeah, former Jet draft.
I'm sure he was good, you know? He was seeing
so good, so good that he made he didn't even make it through one contract before they moved on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
so,
third round pick out of USC a couple years back with the Mike McCagnon era.
Man, so I'm looking at this. I'm thinking right tackles. You got Terrence Steele, so you're good there. Zach Martin's probably moving on. Cooper Beebe, I was a fan of, so center's good. Tyler Smith, you're good there. Okay, Tyler Guyton, that's who they picked last year. So
yeah.
They're not taking a tackle, I don't think, but you could use a guard. So they could go offensive line. And I don't know, like Will Campbell playing right guard's probably kind of a weird transition. I still think he can do it. Man, but you know what? I think that I'm going to go with Kenneth Grant. They need to stop the run. That has been a huge problem for them. I think they could use another player on the interior defensive line. I know they've tried investing there. It didn't work with Mozzie Smith, at least so far. But Kenneth Grant, I think, would be phenomenal for the interior of that defensive line. I think he's someone who's going to rise up boards, especially once he goes to the combine and probably shows out there. I'm going to take him with this pick. It might sound a little crazy, but I could see something like that happening for Dallas. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I understand it. I like Kenneth Grant. Maybe a little too rich for me. I'm not saying it's a bad pick, but I can assure you, expect for the Dallas fans to get in your comments because the last thing they want to see is another interior lineman,
probably
defensive lineman from Michigan. You know,
yeah,
after the Mozzie Smith experience hasn't worked out very well.
I think it would work out with Grant. At least, it would turn out very differently. He's going to be a very good NFL player, right? I'm not worried about that. But it could have been Will Campbell. You know, it could have been Luther Burden maybe. There were some other options, but that's one I've kind of looked at recently where I think he's going to go kind of early in the first, somewhere around this range, and you kind of need improvements there if you're Dallas. So, you know, it's like sunk cost fallacy, right? Are you just going to say because we've invested all this that we're just going to pretend it's working, right? You got to do something if it's not working, and that might be taking a player like this. Although I'm sure you might want to trade down a few spots if you can, but I don't know how far. Like, you know, maybe Arizona's looking at that type of player. But you're back on the clock at 13. I am curious to see who you take with the Dolphins here because I think there's a lot of ways this could go.
Yeah, the Dolphins are in a weird spot, man, because they are over the cap as it stands right now, so they're going to have to make a lot of moves to get cap compliant before the start of the new year. You know, so they're going to have to make some cuts or do some restructure, so on and so forth. I think the lazy take is to plug an interior lineman. You know, they're losing both their guards in Isaiah Wynn and Robert Jones. I think that's the lazy take, though, because it's been shown that through this regime, that is not a position of value for them. They look to get rid of the ball under 3 seconds. I think you can find a guy mid-rounds that can hold up that, you know, for that period of time without being, you know, so dominant, you know, in pass protection. And so I'm going to veer away from that. They have so many holes in that defense. They're going to have to replace so many guys. Calais Campbell's retiring. Their nose tackle.
Is that official?
I believe so. I believe he has hung it up.
Oh, man.
Their nose tackle, Benito Jones, was on a 1-year deal. Tyrell Dodson, who they got midseason from Seattle, and Anthony Walker, both their inside linebackers are gone. Both of their starting safeties are right now unrestricted free agents, and Jordan Poyer, who has retired as well, and Javon Holland. So Malaki Starks is definitely in play here.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's three guys that are in play for me here. I don't know. Malaki Starks is definitely in play. I think Shamar Stewart could be in play because he could, at 285 pounds, he could kind of fill that Calais Campbell role. Your strong side, rush end. Um, although I think he has a lot to be desired against the run. Or the pick that might be off the wall here, which I don't think is that crazy. And actually, I think I've talked myself into it. It's the way I'm going to go for them. I'm going to take. Do I want to do it? Yeah, I'm going to take. I'm going to take. I'm going to take Jaylen Walker out of Georgia.
Okay.
I think he plays off ball. I think he can help supplement the pass rush in certain situations. You can have Jordan Brooks and Jaylen Walker on the board at the same time, on the field at the same time, whether it's in sub package or in base. And Walker is he's one of my favorite players. He's a top 10 guy in the class for me. I think his athleticism is unmatched. I think the way he plays, the ferocity that he plays with, he's shot out like a cannon. Forget about the sideline speed, but the way he disrupts in the backfield. I know it might be a little high for an off-ball backer, but he's more than just an off-ball backer. He's kind of that rover position, similar to what Micah Parsons does, a little bit of everything. So Jaylen Walker's going to be the pick here for Miami.
Gotcha. I do like that for Miami. I think I had that mocked a few times earlier this season. I could definitely see it, and they've had a lot of injuries generally in that front seven, especially with the pass rushers. So, Walker's going to add something to that, and that will definitely help them out. Now, I don't know if this is how trade propositions usually work, but I have a trade proposition for you. You control the Bengals pick here at number 17. I control the Colts at 14. This would be Tyler Warren if he fell, but he's gone. And sure, I could take Colston Loveland here. I could go that kind of route, but I have, let's see, the Falcons and the Cardinals below me,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't take a tight end, I think I could get my guys. So, do you think that the Bengals might be interested in moving up at some place like this for, say, Malaki Starks, or even got Will Campbell falling down the board here? You have some top players, especially Starks. I think would be a fit, but
Yeah,
we always know the Bengals.
I'm gonna sit tight with the Bengals because I have an idea of where they're gonna go or where I think they should go.
Okay.
So, again, trading up for a safety, if that's the avenue that they're going to go, to me, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. So I'm going to sit tight with the Bengals. I have an idea on where I want to go with them.
I'm trying to think of who might do this, some of my picks at least. I'm kind of wondering if Seattle would want to come up for Campbell at this point, because I don't think Campbell should fall much further. And I don't know what team's taking him in the next few picks. I guess the Cardinals could look at it, but he can move inside. Seattle has some major issues on that offensive line. Do you think he's the type of player that might make sense for them or fit in that sort of system?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Cardinals and Seattle, if you're looking for a trade partner, are both teams that could use an interior guy, and maybe have an interior guy that can flex out to play on the tackle at times too. So yeah, I think probably Seattle more than the Cardinals, because I think the Cardinals, if they go offensive line, might want more of a pure tackle. And I just don't know if that's Campbell. Campbell's a better lineman, but I don't know if he's the best pure tackle on the board.
Yeah, I think this would do a lot for Seattle. They had their players retire in the middle of the season. It was a disaster for them. And so I think if you get Campbell just playing anywhere on the interior there, that's a huge win for them. This is a player who ended up falling, which it's going to happen, right? Draft day, there's always players who fall down the board. And so Seattle ends up being a team taking advantage of that at pick number 14. Now, you're up at pick number 15 with the Falcons. Oh, gosh, I think I know where this would be going. Who is going to be the pick for you? Let's see if we agree on this one.
Hold on 1 second. Let me just catch up here.
You're good. And more so speaking position, Because I think you could debate the player a little bit.
Yeah, let me just make the trade here. Seattle.
Okay.
Takes Will Campbell. Boom. So I'm on the clock. Listen. There's two. I mean, it's gonna be. I'm pretty sure Atlanta is in a position where they want to trade down. Hear me out. They have very limited draft capital. Very, very limited draft capital, if I'm not mistaken. I think they have. Well, we only have.
Gosh, yeah, they have like no third, no fifth, no sixth, and their seventh is later than their own. Because they have Los Angeles.
Correct. This is a spot where I think they're going to look to move down and accrue some capital. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a big jump up the board if it's okay with you.
Yeah, spit it out. What team you got here?
I'm going to have Washington come up to 15.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the context of it is, that's something that's going to need to be figured out. I think it's definitely going to be 29 and a 1 next year to move from 25 to 15. I don't know if there's more compensation that's going to be there. I don't have like a draft value chart, where that falls in, so on and so forth.
Look really quick. And I do think it's a little cheaper this year, just given no one wants to trade up in the draft. But 15, so, okay, this is like the updated version. So this is the Rich Hill modern valuation model. 15 is worth 315, 29 is worth 202. So if they traded another first, they'd be overpaying. If you say they value as the last pick in the first round, you're giving up 386 points for 315. So I wonder, they have pick 61. What would 61 be worth here? It's a stupid ad that pops up every
Yeah, so why don't we do that? Why don't we do 29-61 and say
and then something else for sure.
A third rounder in 26, just for sake of argument. I think that's probably a little bit more along the lines of something that would happen. So they're giving up a 1, a 2, and then a 3 next year. So we're going to force that.
Okay. Washington's
now on the clock. And Washington, they got, I think they wanted to get, I think you're going to see a run on edge rushers here. So I think Washington wanted to get ahead of the curve. That's a position. I mean, they got a couple positions that, they got some of that, slot receiver or split end outside opposite of Terry is an area. They can upgrade some places on the offensive line. I don't know if they have a starter that's leaving, but they definitely could use some depth. But where they do need help is the defense, the edge room. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is where I'm going to have Shamar Stewart come off the board.
Okay. That's kind of who I figured it might be, but
and
there's some
listen,
good edges here.
Yeah, Pearce is definitely an option. I'm just curious the way I look at it. I think that Shamar Stewart could see the field. I think Pearce, although he's going to be good, and I like Pearce a lot, he's a little bit light in the tail, so he might start his career more so as that designated pass rusher type. Whereas I think Shamar Stewart can come in. You can move him inside in certain situations, certain pass, and have him rush next to Jerzon Newton, next to Jonathan Allen. I think he brings a good presence on the edge opposite of Dorrance Armstrong in Washington. So Shamar Stewart's going to be the pick for Washington. They locked in their edge. And that defensive line now, assuming they bring Dante Fowler back, that defensive line, if they bring Fowler back, they have Dorrance Armstrong. You add Shamar Stewart, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Jerzon Newton. You got some players there. You got some depth.
Yeah.
So that's the way I'm going to go. And that would leave you
Yeah, I
up on
like
the
that.
clock with the Cardinals. Thank you.
Yeah, the Cardinals, I think at this point I'm looking at offensive line. It's just a question of which one. I would probably want Booker, but it's a question of, I know Jonah Williams played for them this last year. I'm not sure how he played, or if he's someone who's like going to be around past this year. I don't know how long his contract is. Actually, we'll just look that up really quick.
Yeah, I think he got a 3-year deal last year, so he's going to be
Okay.
around. But
2 years, but he's guaranteed through this year.
Yeah, he's really just a guy. I think that they wouldn't have a problem at least bringing in competition for him, or at least having his replacement ready.
Yeah, I think this could be where you see an interior offensive line go, or offensive lineman. You saw Will Campbell go to do that with Seattle. Kelvin Banks Jr. would be an option if they want to kick him inside. You also have Tyler Booker still sitting here. Kelvin Banks, I could see a team just having him rated higher. So I'm going to end up going that direction here. I feel like with Tyler Booker, it's sort of mixed what I hear, because it's like, I would think teams would love him, but then you keep hearing all these prospects getting thrown above him all the time. Like, where Armand Membu is like above Tyler Booker, just all of a sudden, which
Yeah,
maybe
Booker's
you agree with that, but I
actually don't. Booker's my number 13 player in the class. However, I will say this about Booker. He's going to be very scheme specific. If your offense runs any sort of outside zone, or where you want to have your guards get out in space, that's really not Booker's. That's really not his forte. He's as solid as they come against the pass. He is a power gap scheme blocker to the extreme. I don't know how nimble in space he would be, so I think teams are going to really typecast him, and the teams that run that more power gap duo based offenses will really kind of flock towards Booker, and the teams that run more outside zone probably won't.
Gotcha. That does make sense. So we'll have to see where he goes. I imagine he's off the board in the first round. I would be shocked if I don't get him off. He's number 10 on my board. So
yeah.
Gotcha.
Kelvin Banks.
Well, you're on the clock now with 17 with the Bengals.
Yeah, and so if I wanted to pluck Starks, I would, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna make this one pretty easy. I'm going to assume T. Higgins isn't back, right?
Okay.
I'm gonna assume T. Higgins gets the Godfather contract from one of these teams that has tons of money. Cincinnati has not shown a penchant to pay him what he thinks he needs. I think you can make an argument here for Colston Loveland. However, they did spend a 4th-round capital on Eric Alt last year. They integrate Drew Sample, and again, you talked about it earlier. It's a deeper class. I think you can supplement it later. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Luther Campbell off the board here. Luther Burden. Luther Campbell, the singer. Luther Burden, and then you have you have Burden, you have Jamar Chase, you have Andre Chevis, who can flip flop. Burden and Chevis can flip flop between the slot and the flanker, while you have Jamar on the outside. I don't know what's happened with Jermaine Burton. He was suspended for conduct detrimental to the team numerous times last year.
He might be gone.
He might be out of the league. I think this is an area where you have to pad your strength, and your strength on this team is Joe Burrow and him being able to have weapons to throw the ball to. Personally, I happen to have Emeka Egbuka rated higher than I do Burden, but I think Burden is the better fit here for what Cincinnati wants to do. So Burden's going to come off the board.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that pick for them. Obviously, you have major questions about the defense still, but you have other opportunities to address that too, right? It's not like free agency doesn't exist or they can't make other moves. And it's easy to forget that when we're just doing mock drafts, especially
Correct.
this time of year. Now, for the Colts, if I recall, they still need safety. I don't think they've addressed that. That's been a problem
They-
for quite a while.
Correct.
Benjamin Morrison also might make a lot of sense. I can't, man, they got a different DC now. So I don't know if they're going to be man or zone or what specifically, but there's some cornerbacks on the board.
Who's their DC? Is it Eberflus? No, that's in
Didn't they
Dallas.
get Lou Anarumo?
They did get Lou Anarumo, so it's gonna be quarters and it's gonna be more zone based. He does mix it up and he will bring some blitzes and go to man. I'd say it's more multiple, with a heavier focus towards quarters and cover 4.
Yeah, I might. Shavon Revel might be a way they might go. They might like just a high upside corner there, but we're gonna just take Starks off the board. I think he goes somewhere around here. I don't have him rated like crazy high on my board. I've probably been lower on him than most, but this is the need for the Colts. He shouldn't be here, and so I'm gonna go with him at number 18. And you're back on the clock with some really good options for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 19.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay's got some decisions to make as well, right? Does Godwin re-sign? I am assuming he's going to re-sign. There's no reason for me to think differently. I think that they could look on the interior of the offensive line and kind of beef that up as well. I think edge rusher. To me, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is unrestricted. Anthony Nelson is old, and I think he's unrestricted. They got some holes on that defensive side. I think a cornerback would make sense here as well. I know they paid Jamal Dean. They drafted Tyke Smith to play the nickel last year. I forgot who's on the opposite side of Jamal Dean off the top of my head, but so I think cornerback could help, but nothing, rings so prevalent as someone who can really get at the rusher in that Bowls 3-4 base where they're going to bring pressure from all over the place. To me, this is easy. This is James Pearce all day long. I think this is a perfect fit, a perfect scheme for him. And that doesn't matter. I think that James Pearce is this is a perfect landing spot for him and his skill set.
Yep, I completely agree. That's exactly the pick I would have made there. It's a top player, or at least someone with a lot of upside, falling to them in a big position need, fits schematically. It's just an easy pick for Tampa. But there's a talk, I think, at cornerback. That's an area they could definitely use someone on the outside. But, yeah, Pierce would be the pick for me as well. Now, this is really easy for me at number 20. I don't know a player that's going to convince me off of it. You can throw one out if you want, but Colston Loveland is here.
Listen, I get that, and probably the smart pick, and probably the pick I would make as well. But I will throw something out to you.
Okay.
Not to change your mind, but just to.
No, I invited this, so it's okay.
Yeah. This is a sneaky spot for a running back. Javonte Williams is unrestricted, and he's already talked about. He understands that he's probably going to move on. They spent a late round pick on Aldrick Estime last year, who is a little bit one note. Not really going to affect the game so much as a pass receiver. So if you can get a guy in here that can, fill, that can play on the early downs and still affect the game, like, to me, it's crazy because you're getting rid of one UNC guy, but I would love Omarion Hampton here. I would love Trevion Henderson here. But again, I get where you're going with Loveland, and that makes sense as well.
Yeah, it would be too rich for me to go with either of them. It would be Henderson if I had to choose between them. Hampton I've been kind of low on, but I just think Loveland is too good of a fit here. It's a player that is going to be towards the top of your board, big position of need. Like, it's easy for me with this one for Sean Payton. But you have other picks here. I think something falls, and if they need to move up, they can. I think it's an easy class to do that in, so I am going to go ahead and I'm going to take Colston Loveland off the board for the Broncos. But I appreciate your counter argument.
Yeah,
made it a little more fun.
So I'm up here with Pittsburgh. And I think everyone automatically kind of plugged Pittsburgh into wide receiver, which makes sense. But I will say this, and I will throw this out just to talk it out. Is this a spot where a quarterback comes off the board?
Yeah.
You get the
Are you
fifth round
talking
pick.
Milrow, you think, or someone else?
I think it's either Milrow or Dart. I mean, I think those are the only two options to come off the board here. I'm not crazy on either of those as a first round pick, but just you look at the depth chart of what they have. They don't have any quarterbacks under contract, right? Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Kyle Allen are all gone. I'm assuming that one of them will be back, at least if not as the starter, as the bridge to a rookie. So considering it's the beginning of February and free agency hadn't started, we don't know where it's going. I'm gonna shy away. I'm not gonna take a quarterback here. Okay. I am gonna go to the wide receiver room. And this is where I'm gonna have Matthew Golden come off. I know a lot of people don't talk about him as a first rounder. I think they should. I think that his skill set is very complementary to what they have. To Pickens, what they have in the room. Pickens already. He's got big playability. I love the way he moves. He's a really, really smooth athlete. He's nuanced in his route running. He's big enough at 6'1.5", 199 pounds. He's got ball skills. He can go up and get it. To me, I think he's got an upside of a wide receiver one, and in an offense that is really just void of that. Those weapons. Yeah, you might consider Pat Freiermuth a weapon. And like I said, I have Egbuka ranked higher, but I think his skill set is going to be destined for just the slot, where Calvin Austin is kind of under contract and kind of hones in that slot spot. To me, they need a field side boundary guy, so that's why I'm going to move with Matt Golden.
Now, before I click this, you were trying to argue about running back at number 20 with the Pittsburgh Steelers here. I mean, my understanding is Najee Harris would be out at the end of this year. They could re-sign him, but that running back room kind of blows up. Is that something you'd even have in consideration at this pick if you're high on those guys, or are you pretty set on Matthew Golden?
No, I think the drop-off from Golden to the next tier of receivers is too big. And the drop off from like the next tier of running backs. I think you're still if they want to address running back in round 2 or 3, you're still going to get a really good guy that can come in and start and play, or at least complement what they have in the backfield already in Jaylen Warren. So I'm going to hold off on the running back.
All right, yeah, that sounds good. Now I got to figure out what to do with the Chargers. And man, what could they really use? I know running back, if I was high enough on someone, would definitely be in play. Because it's very clear they want to just run the ball.
Yeah.
Tight end would have been. But you're down to now like Harold Fannin Jr. and Gunnar Helm and guys like that.
Yeah, the value's not here for running back.
It's not here for anything.
If you're asking me, I think it's either on the defensive line or it's a running back. I think those are your two options.
Could be a trade as well.
Could be a trade. But who's trading up for what?
Josh Simmons has fallen. I mean, Emeka Egbuka, for one, I think he would be a commodity to consider at this point. Shavon Revel, those would be some players I would throw out. I would wonder if the Rams would have interest in Simmons at 22.
They might be able to sit. They might be able to sit at 26 and still land a good tackle.
Yeah, see, because you're not going to worry about the Vikings doing it, not the Texans, and Packers. They just took Jordan Morgan last year. This is just a really crappy situation for the Chargers, at least the way I'm looking at it. They could use a pass rusher. I mean, there are questions there. They're going to have a lot of players leaving, potentially. Yeah. They could also avoid that maybe. If they want to get another power rusher, and I know probably Michael Williams would be the top guy here, but I would say maybe Nick Scourton
Yeah,
would be
that's
the
who I
pick
would.
for me at this
If
point.
I was going edge, that's where I would go.
Yeah,
For
and I
sure.
think this is a little bit of a value, even just where I have him ranked still. I know for some reason he's kind of dropped down boards, but I think this would be a good pick for them if they want to get a Khalil Mack type of replacement on that team.
Yeah.
So you are
Yeah.
back up at 23 with the Packers. So there's a lot of options here. I feel like that they might consider wide
Yeah, hang
receiver
on.
even.
Let me find Scourton.
All right.
Edge rusher. There he is. Kept bypassing him. Yeah. So wide receivers interesting. I don't know if Egbuka checks off what they're looking for. I think Green Bay needs a true boundary guy, bigger guy. So that for me automatically takes the types like Egbuka and Jack Besh and Restrepo or off the board, the Jalen Royals off the board. I think they're going to need more of a bigger guy. To me, this is just a little rich for that next tier
they
of guys
don't
like Ayo Minor and Higgins. This is way too rich for them. So I'm going to pass on receiver. It's tough though. There's a lot of.
I was gonna say, what do you think about Grey Zabel playing center?
Yeah, he's definitely in in the discussion here. But I'm gonna go a different way. I'm gonna stick to my board.
Okay.
And this is where I'm gonna have Tyler Booker come off. I'm gonna have Tyler Booker come in and be my guard, and I'm gonna move Elgin Jenkins back to center and kill two birds with one stone here, and really make them that offensive line a true powerhouse there. Tyler Booker off the board for the Packers.
This is a good pick for him. I think it hurts Minnesota as well. That's the flip side, because if you're Minnesota, you want some. I think you want to get some help on the interior with that team. I don't know as much about their scheme, so maybe Booker doesn't fit truly into that. But
yeah, I don't know if Booker. They run a lot of outside zone. They got a big, hand-to-hand influence West Coast style offense. So I don't know if Booker would be a fit. Minnesota to me is defense. They have so many holes to replace with guys whose contracts are expiring. So I think defensive back is the way I would go in Minnesota. Minnesota.
You're good. Yeah, I would think at this point you could talk about Morrison or Revel. They're pretty heavy zone, right?
I think it's a fair mix. I mean, they blitz a lot, so when they go blitz, they ran more cover zero, more man cover zero than anyone in the league last year, other than the Raiders. But their base is they do like to run a lot of base.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Shavon Revel here. I think that's gonna be the pick for me. Benjamin Morrison's falling really far. I think that's gonna stop at some point here, but I just think that Revel would be a really nice high upside pick who's got experience doing really anything they would ask of him. It'd just be a nice selection for the Minnesota Vikings. So that's what I'm gonna do there.
And Houston's on the board here. And everyone knows how bad that offensive line was, and they need some reinforcements on the offensive line. Don't necessarily know if that's the way I'm going to go, though, which is kind of crazy. No, it is. This is where Grey Zabel's coming off the board. And Grey Zabel can play center. Grey Zabel can play guard. I'm confident Grey Zabel can play tackle in a pinch as well. But you really need to improve on, Titus Howard, Shaq Mason, Jarrett Patterson, Juice Scruggs, Kenyon Green. The interior of that offensive line is what was awful last year, and Grey Zabel, I think, can solidify some of that. Although I think this is a sneaky spot for receiver as well, especially with the Diggs injury and his contract issue. This could be a wide receiver spot, and I think Egbuka is definitely in the discussion, but need on the interior for me is too high, and Grey Zabel can fit all three of those spots, so he's going to be the pick.
Speaking of Emeka Egbuka, I'm kind of thinking about this at 26 with Cooper Kupp leaving. And
Yeah.
I think the way that the Rams roll, they generally have a very good draft process. At least recently, they've shown that. Take a lot of best player available. Take the guys who are kind of obvious that maybe teams overlook. Last year, that was Jared Verse, and it's a great pick. To me, this would be Emeka Egbuka to replace Cooper Kupp, or it could be Josh Simmons as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Simmons, I would have ranked higher. I'm gonna go with Emeka Egbuka. I think they're gonna want to get their next guy there. I don't think they want to leave Puka Nacua just kind of out there by himself. And this is another player who can come in, block at a high level for them as well, take over in the slot, and just really help out that offense. So I would think that could be the pick for the Los Angeles
and
Rams.
he's so nuanced in his route running, his understanding of defenses, finding soft spots that I love that. I love that fit. I haven't seen it yet, but now with the Cooper Kupp news, it makes a ton of sense. And it leaves me on the board here with Baltimore, and I'm not going to hesitate. To me, I'm taking what I think is the best left tackle in the class.
Yeah.
Josh Conerly Jr. is coming off the board.
Oh, Josh Conerly?
Absolutely.
Shoot.
He's my
you played me.
He's my
Oh my
tackle.
gosh.
He's my tackle one in this class. I think Baltimore is going to need to replace Ronnie Stanley. Maybe they bring him back, but again, being where we're at right now, pre-free agency, you can't really say. They don't have much depth behind him. Roger Rosengarten, who they spent a second-round pick last year, is a right tackle only, a very athletic one, and I think Josh Conerly brings a lot of those same traits. I think he's a day one starter at left tackle, and he'll be a good one in the league. So
I agree. I agree. He's a good player. I was thinking it was going to be Josh Simmons. Honestly, he is my left tackle one in this class. And you started off by saying Josh, so I was really excited for a moment there. But it's all good. I feel really bad having him on the board at 28 because I'm so much higher on him. But
but you know what?
I think we're kind of being predictive here, right?
The patella tendon tear is not one that I think is going to be as easy to come back. I think that's going to ding him and hurt him a little bit. So
yeah,
I don't know
everyone
if
mocks him like top 10.
I don't know if Josh Simmons is a lock to go before in the first half of the draft. Could he go at the end of round one? Yes. Could he fall to the beginning of round two? I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and that would be crazy. I think he'd be steal of the draft maybe at that point, just with where I have him. But I could see it. Definitely see it. I'm kind of wondering if there is a team that would be able to move up from the second round here that might need a tackle. I almost wonder if New England.
I'll tell you what. If you're interested in moving down, I will move up with the Eagles if you want to move down to 31.
Let me do an offer with. Okay, do you think this would make sense for the Patriots? Start there. We'll see if you beat out the offer.
Okay.
So let's say if New England does this, it's 209, 157. So you're making up like 50 something points. This is gonna have to be like a high third. So it's gonna be. It'd be 38 and 77 would be what I would be offering Detroit to move up here and to go get a tackle for Drake May. What would you offer from 31? Which fifth year option as well, if for Detroit, if they stick around.
So I would offer 31 and 2/3, one this year, one next year, because Philly has 2/3 next year. They have their own and the Jets in 2023.
That would be very expensive I would definitely take that. We'll just say it's 95 here.
That's what I said. That's what I
So
said. 30, 31, 95, and a third next year.
yeah, I won't even include the third next year. Not that this even matters, just because the 95 would definitely get it over, and otherwise it's probably overkill. But all these teams see it differently anyway. So I will take the Eagles trade though in that case, because that is a better offer than what New England would do. But I do think New England would be looking at a tackle here if Simmons is falling or something like that. But
Yeah, and
if he's falling this far, it just continues.
Well, it's not going to fall any further. Simmons is going to come off the board here for the Eagles. He's going to be the Lane Johnson replacement of the future. And I think he could, even if they don't bring Mekhi Becton out, I think if he's healthy enough, he could start at right guard until Lane Johnson decides it's time to move on, and then just kick right outside. So there was a few teams that Josh Simmons made sense. This is one of them. So the Eagles go ahead and pluck Simmons off the board. I know that was supposed to be your pick since it was an even number, but you can just take the Lions at 31. Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. And I love that pick for the Eagles. And, he did play right tackle back, I think it was, San Diego State?
Correct.
He was with before. So he's got experience out there for sure. All right, man, if you're the Falcons here, you traded down 14 spots, you got more draft capital, and you got a pass rusher still on the board.
You got a couple of them.
Yeah.
So realistically, it's between three guys for me here. Mykal Williams is the upside guy, right? He's the guy, if you project that he's going to have a Trayvon Walker type rise in his career and production, where you might not get a lot of him early on. You know that you're going to get a solid run defender. But the pass rush bag is still, it's still a lot of projection. I think that's a way you can go. If you want to get more pass rush right off the bat, but maybe not as high of a ceiling, I think you can talk about Princely Umamielen. And I think Jack Sawyer is a guy who gives you kind of a little bit of both. He's your workman-like type guy. Might not ever be a consistent double-digit sack guy, but is high-effort player, is going to play 70 to 80% of the snaps right from the get-go. So I think there's three ways you can really attack this. And for me, I'm going to keep the kid home. I'm going to keep the Georgia kid home, and I'm taking Mykal Williams here.
Gotcha.
Like I said, you hope that the upside is, in Raheem Morris's defense is, developed. I think that he could fit that, that tough run defense that Ulbrich, who's now the defensive coordinator, who came from the Jets, is going to want in his defensive, in his edge rushers. So, it's great value here at 29. You traded down, you still got a top-tier edge rusher. So you're up with Buffalo.
Yeah, now Buffalo, oh, man. You have options at corner, I would say, if you want to go that route. I don't know their scheme. That would be the thing kind of holding me back here as far as what direction I would go. Because if they run a lot of man, I think Morrison's phenomenal for a pick. If they're more of a zone team or more mixed, maybe you're going.
Yeah, they're a good blend. That's what they are. The one thing that they are locked in, they have one of the best slot corners in the game. And they definitely need to replace. Oh my God, what's his name?
I feel like it's a guy I didn't know.
Benford's on the outside. Benford's opposite of Rasul Douglas, who's an unrestricted free agent, if I'm not mistaken. Why can't I think of his name? Who's the slot corner there? Teron Johnson.
Oh, okay. I've heard that before.
I think defensive interior is in consideration here. I think cornerback is in consideration. I think wide receiver is in consideration.
Yeah, wide receiver, they just went their first round last year, so I'm probably going to skip on doing that again. Cornerback, if they need an outside guy and they want to blend the things, Maxwell Harrison, I think, might sneak in the first round. I
All
think
right.
that the week he had at the Senior Bowl could do that for him. I think he's going to be someone who interviews well with teams and could probably go maybe a little bit earlier than expected. Could also come down to Jade Barron
Yeah.
potentially here, because he could really play anywhere for that team, and they have a lot of injuries in the secondary. So, it seems like every year. But I'm going to go with Maxwell here for the Buffalo Bills at 30. That leaves me up with Detroit.
Yep.
And here, I think there's options. And if, by the way, if you have a team you think would trade up in the end of the first round, let me know. But I would be looking at Armand Mambu. I think Jack Sawyer. If they hadn't drafted 2 man coverage corners last year, Benjamin Morrison would probably be the way to go. Aside from that, for the Lions, I'm not sure. Maybe they could take a receiver, but there's not really a name I would maybe select at this point. Wyatt Milam could be a player they like. I'm gonna say with the not really having someone across from Aiden Hutchinson, especially the mentality that Jack Sawyer plays with, that's probably gonna be the way I go here, unless you have like a trade offer or something like that.
No, I don't have anybody that's looking to move up.
Gotcha. All right, well, we'll do that, and then we know the Chiefs won't want to move down because they want to get glorified in front of everyone. I remember going to the draft in 2023 in KC, and we literally heard before they weren't even going to listen to offers just because they wanted to be the last team out to have like a celebration about it. So they'll probably do the same thing here. That's them. 2 different ways to go, and it's similar names here again. Actually, 3 you could throw out. They have some great options on the board. Benjamin Morrison, if they want to get a man corner. They lost L'Jarius Sneed last year, obviously. It's kind of just feels like it's who's their guy? I'm already forgetting his name all of a sudden now. The Washington cornerback.
Trent McDuffie.
Yeah, Trent McDuffie. Yeah, and it's just kind of random guys around, and they play fine, But you could use a Morrison there, and that would be a really nice steal at this point for the Chiefs. Armand Mambu would be the local guy for them. They're going to probably need to replace Trey Smith, or at least someone on the interior, I would imagine. So maybe they go that direction. I don't think they'll take tackle just because they invested in Sua Matea.
But he's still developing, and I think he can. I think he's a right tackle. What they could do is, listen. I think tackle could make sense. With a flexible guy like Armand Mambu or Ariante Ursary. Because you can also just kick Thuney back inside to fill the Trey Smith spot. But I would lean that way or cornerback, because I think if you get a boundary guy, you can put Trent McDuffie back in his home at nickel and let him kind of, play the post a little bit more and really utilize him on the blitzes. Maybe a guy like you have him up here, Jade Barron makes sense too.
This was my other option.
If you want to, if you want to keep Trent McDuffie on the outside on the boundary, then Jade Barron's can come in and play the slot. So it would make sense to me, either cornerback or tackle or offensive lineman. That should say that.
I'm going to go with the name that I don't think has any business falling out of the first round, and it's going to be Benjamin Morrison here. I think it's probably the highest upside, also maybe the best pick they could make. It's close, but I just can't imagine him falling out of the first round unless his injury is really that big of a deal. Sometimes it is, but this was a guy who was like easily top 10 prospect at the start. Schematically fits for them, and it's an area they need to improve. But yeah, it's a close pick, but that's the way I'm going to go, I think, with 32 to wrap this thing up. And we'll see what our results are here. We can go back through it real quick. But ultimately, you feel pretty good about your picks here? You think anything was kind of weird, or?
No, I don't think anything's kind of weird. I think Yeah, everything kind of seems pretty stock in my eyes. I mean, some people might think it's a little high for Golden. I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah.
if he's plucked in the first round. I think, um, I think Kenneth Grant was a little high. That's just my preference. I think for what you're looking at there, and I get the fit, but I think that there might have been some other guys on the board at that point that I might have looked for.
Well, yeah, and you
Dallas.
want to piss off the biggest, fan base you can. It's kind of the
Yeah, right. So, outside of that, I think everything is pretty fair. We had a big trade up with Washington. And in hindsight, they probably could have sat at 29 and still plucked off a good edge, saved some capital, but they went up and got their guy.
It wasn't that expensive either. They didn't have to give up like a first round pick in the future. It's an easy year, I think, to trade up. So I do like it for Washington. And, getting your choice of everyone does matter as long as you choose the right one. But yeah, I like it. I think the unique part of this, at least from what I've seen compared to other mock drafts, is the 1-2 side of this with New York and Las Vegas coming up. And I think, honestly, like if I had to predict, and not saying it's more than 50% likely, but I could see this, right? I think New York would be the team to go to 1, and if Cleveland doesn't want to take a quarterback at 2, well, the Raiders are going to take that pick.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of it. I think that works out really well there. And it also works out for the teams that trade down, right? Travis Hunter going to the Titans is a steal for them, and Mason Graham to the Browns is still a really good pick, and you load up for the future as well.
Yeah, and they got, now Tennessee has 2 picks in the top 5 of the second round, so they can pluck their quarterback. They can pluck their Milroe or their Jackson Dart if they want to, and have them compete with Will Levis, or at worst, pass on that altogether and wait till 2026. So, yeah, listen, I'll say this. I think that there's a clear top 4 in this class. Whether they're not my top 4 ranked guys, but
yeah, but who's going top 4?
I think these top 4 are pretty set, in just what order they go is the question.
Yeah, totally agree. I've just been wondering if it's going to be 2 quarterbacks and then, the 2 in Travis and Abdul. You don't know though. I think the big wild, I think the big wild card is probably the Browns, just because everything's kind of chaotic there right now. But at the end of the day, like if you're not taking a quarterback up here, there's teams that want quarterback. You're going to have a market for it, and it'd just be shocking to me to not see one of those teams trade up. And if they didn't, kudos to them if they still get the guy. Maybe they pull off what Minnesota did, where they don't move up to 5 with the Chargers, and they only move up a spot with the Jets, which I didn't even need to do, but the Jets ripped them off. Good job for you guys. But, maybe they pull that off. We'll have to see for sure.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. A lot of things will change. We got the Combine coming up in, less than 3 weeks now?
Yeah.
But, yeah. Ready for that. But I appreciate having you on today. Once again, guys, go check out his YouTube, subscribe, follow him on Twitter as well. We'll pull that up really quick so you can get your handle.
It's at DC_NY Jets.
All right. Yep, I got you right here. So yeah, go give him a follow. A lot of good draft content. Definitely stuff you want to check out. And we got to support each other too. We were talking about this at the Senior Bowl. Like, as Jags and Jets fans, we should be in this together. No hostility unless we play each other. This is my opinion on it personally.
Which I think we do play each other in 25. So
that's true. Yeah, because we were third in division. Both of us were.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on the show. You got any last words before you go?
No, man. A lot of fun. Great time meeting you down in Mobile, and I'm sure that we'll do some more stuff together as we get into the meat and potato of the draft season, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for our standard outro here, we want to make sure we thank the channel members: Premier Seer 904, Nightmare Eco, Gator John Bites, Scrubber Ducky 500, and Mogar. If you guys like this kind of content or want Dom to come back on the channel in the future, definitely let me know. We want to do more collaborative stuff for sure. Especially these mock drafts are fun. I always enjoy them. Just seem to never do enough of them. But I appreciate y'all watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.